What's up, guys? This is Matt with surfcitytcg, back with part 4 of my 1,000 part series on the SURFIES 2024 nominees for best cards of the year. Just exaggerating a little, but this is taking a little longer than I expected, so thanks for bearing with me and being patient as I get these videos out. I'm pretty new to production and editing, so I'm sort of learning all of this stuff as I go, and it's been a lot of hard work. So thank you for all of your support and encouragement, and I'm really glad to hear that a lot of people are enjoying these videos. So if you are enjoying them, or if you have any other feedback you want to leave me, please do so in the comments below. I do appreciate all the comments I get because it helps tell YouTube that you like my video, aside from just liking the button, which please do, and dropping me a subscription, which please do. Please leave comments too. That really helps me out. So thanks for that. If you didn't catch the previous parts of this series, I'll provide a link for you in the top right corner here. So check those out first. Just to recap though, this is my personal evaluation of cards released in 2024. All these evaluations are based on my typical playstyle, which is usually like a mid to high powered, something like a power 7 to 8. These are non-EDH decks, but still very strong and optimized lists, and I typically don't run any infinites. So with that all being said, let's get into where we started and left off with the life gain category. Pretty important one lately. With all this group slug I mentioned in a previous video, it's just like, it feels like playing Commander sometimes is like standing in a poison swamp in a video game where it's just like your health's ticking away slowly and it starts beeping incessantly and you're like, oh no, my anxiety. So having like incidental sources of life gain, even if you're not a specific life gain deck, is I think more important than ever. This makes equipment that gives lifelink ultra important, stuff like Shadow Spear, which is always valuable in the creature centric Commander of 2024 and soon to be 2025. But other ways to give lifelink, Witch's Cottage is a really good one, and there's tons of others, and these are all really important. So we're going to look at cards that help us gain life, because there are so many other cards that are trying to lower our life total, and screw those guys. So let's start off that list with this thirsty fellow, Bloodthirsty Conqueror. He's a 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 5/5 Vampire Knight. He's got Flying and Death Touch. 5 mana, 5/5 Flying plus Death Touch. Already excellent. And then, wow, what an ability. Whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. Parentheses, damage causes loss of life, but not the other way around. Loss of life does not cause damage. This matters for things that say they trigger whenever they deal damage, because life loss won't make those things work, but things that trigger on loss of life, like this card, will be triggered by damage, because damage causes loss of life. Hopefully that makes sense. This is, for those of you in the know, as they say, as the kids say, for those of you in the know, this is the creature version of Exquisite Blood, which was, and still is, a very pricey enchantment. It's part of a quite notorious and infamous 2-card combo, which I'll put up on the screen here. It's Exquisite Blood plus Sanguine Bond, and any instance of life gain when you have these two doohickeys in play will cause instant death to everyone. And also you gain infinite life, because yay, infinites, woo. Anyway, like, aside from that combo, so here's the thing about this card. First of all, it's phenomenal. You don't need to be running this infinite. I don't play infinites. I have this in my night deck, and I don't run any of the other pieces that can go with this. There are more than one. Sanguine Bond is the main one, but there's also the new Enduring Tenacity, and there's Veto, Thorn of the Dusk Rose, and there's like a lot of other pieces that make this work. When you have this side of it, this is the harder side of it to have, and this is honestly the better side of it to have in isolation, because if you just ignore any potential combos, forget you don't know about those, whatever, and just read this line of text, which says whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. Holy crap, that is crazy. It basically means that everyone has to send at you, because if they send at each other, if they're, like bickering among themselves, attacking each other, whatever, you're gaining like 3x life for all the opponents being hit. So the only way they could prevent you from gaining life is by smacking you instead. But, fortunately, you've got a 5/5 flying death touch, which I've heard tale that it's pretty hard to get through a 5/5 flying death touch. That's not to say there aren't ways, but this is a body, I tell you what. So yeah, like having this in play is a huge. First of all, even if you're able to convince your opponents that you aren't playing the infinite, they're still going to be and should be extremely frightened of this. It's ultra powerful, and the amount of life this gains you just sitting in play for a couple turns is astronomical. It's crazy. If people have group slug effect out, that's just like pinging everyone. They can't really stop that from happening. And that means like, yeah, you're getting pinged for, so like if you've got a impact tremors in play and you play a creature, it hits everyone for 1, right? Excluding the player with the impact tremors. But now you've got your bloodthirsty conqueror out. So yeah, you're taking 1, but then you're gaining 2. So this means their impact tremors has just become your soul warden while this guy is in play. And that's just one thing. This really adds up, and it's such a good card. This is the kind of card that if you have infinite copies, just throw it in every single black deck you have. You'll never be unhappy to have it. It's always powerful. You don't need infinites with it, although if you play an infinite with it, it's going to win you games. Seriously, this will win you games, even if you don't infinite with it. Such a good card. I started off this video talking about incidental life gain. This is the apex of that. There are a lot of things that will gain you a lot of life. The Soul Sisters, Soul Warden, Soul's Attendant, those are the 2 white ones. And then there's Essence Warden in green, and there's Auriok Champion, which is double white. But those are the only 4 that have the ability, which is whenever any creature enters under anyone's control, you gain a life. There are many others in white, especially, that will give you, and there's one in green, or at least one in green, like Prosperous Innkeeper, that will gain you life anytime you have a creature entering. But it is so much better to have these powerhouse ones that gain you a life when any creature enters. Those will gain you a shit ton of life. This is the only card that I can think of off the top of my head that will gain you more life than those. So this is a powerhouse, plain and simple. Just an ultra powerful creature. Really pushed stat line. It's got Death Touch just for the hell of it, and this lives up to the hype. It really does. If this is a card you're looking to pick up anytime in the immediate future, like in the next 6 months, I'd say, I would recommend just getting a copy now, because it's expensive, but Innistrad Remastered is coming out soon, and what's going to happen then? All the prices of vampires are going to skyrocket. The likelihood of them reprinting this in Innistrad Remastered is extremely minimal. I don't know that this really has anything to do with Innistrad, except that it's a vampire. It's a brand new creature, and it's in Foundations, which is the set that came out right before Innistrad. So it seems to me that the chance of this being in Innistrad Remastered is slim to none. If the full reveal hasn't already happened, which it quite possibly has. I'm pretty bad about staying on top of spoilers, so shout it out in the comments if you know. But I'd say whatever price this is now, I have it updated to lowest per TCGplayer. I did it right before I started this video, and it's saying this is the cheapest version at $30. I'm pretty sure you can get for a little less than that, but maybe I'm wrong. And if Innistrad Remastered comes out and it's still around this price, it's going to go up $10, maybe 15. So it's very expensive, and I don't think, for all this time I've been hyping it, like, I think you can get by without it. But man, it's really good. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not really good. It's going to be better than a card in your deck, almost assuredly, unless your deck is super, super, super fine-tuned and optimized. So, extremely good card. Get it if you can afford it. If not, just pack some removal, man. Caduceus, Staff of Hermes. Hey, we've seen you before on this list. You were in the equipment category. You didn't win, but you're still great. So, see my previous video where I talk about this card in the equipment section, but I'll go over it again. This is a 3-mana legendary equipment. Gives the equipped creature lifelink. We like lifelink. Lifelink's great because not only does it work on combat damage, but it also works on like ping abilities, anything that's dealing damage. So it wouldn't work on your Bloodthirsty Conqueror because that causes loss of life, which, as we discussed, does not cause damage, but damage does cause loss of life, which is not relevant for this card, but is relevant for Bloodthirsty Conqueror, which we are no longer talking about, even though I've probably said it more times at this point in the Caduceus section than I have Caduceus. Maybe now the scales have tipped. Yes. Anyway, gives a creature lifelink. If your creature burns stuff for damage, like if you put this on a Gutter Snipe, it's going to cause that Gutter Snipe damage to be lifelink. It's a word, right? Meaning anytime you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. If you have 3 opponents, that's 6 damage. Boom, you gain 6 life per instant or sorcery. Pretty good. But, most of the time we want this on a just big, beefy creature. In fact, if you did equip this on your Bloodthirsty Conqueror, it would still be great because it's pretty likely you're going to have 30 or more life. I don't know if you knew this, but most Commander games start at 40 life total. I'm not going to say that anymore in these video series, I swear. I don't swear. I'm almost assuredly going to say it again. And equipped creature gets +5/+5 if you have 30 or more life. What? Am I reading this right? +5/+5 and indestructible and prevent all damage that would be dealt to this creature. So, gotcha, in fact. Not today, poisoner. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to this creature. So, yeah. No infect damage, no wither. Get wrecked. Massacre girl, known killer. Kill this, bitch. Equip for double white. This, I mentioned this in the equipment section. Don't love this part. I ran this in Miss Bumbleflower for a while, and I cut it because there were like 2 times where I didn't have the double white to equip at the same turn I played it, and I was like, fuck this shit, and I just flipped the table and bailed. Anyway, that hilarious anecdote aside, this card's great. It's really, really strong. It's going to be a good performer in your deck. And, if you're playing mono white or 2-color and you are inclined to want to run something like Loxodon Warhammer, then this is just going to be better for you, almost certainly. I think the ability to get over 30 life when you have a lifelink weapon is just it's so easy to do, and I think it's pretty easy to rely on you having that +5 and indestructible. I'd say the biggest knock against this card is it's very flashy. People either have heard of it and are scared of it, rightly so, or they haven't heard of it, in which case they're like, oh, a legendary white equipment that I haven't heard of? Let me actually read that. When I'd say 90% of players don't take the time to read cards. this is the kind of card that you're going to want to read, just because I don't know. This is totally an assumption based on like my experience, but I think in general, when people see an equipment, especially a colored equipment, they're like, oh, ooh, what's that? Or they already know what it is. In which case, like, it's a prime target to be removed, which is sad because it's a healing staff, and can't we all just get along? Consuming Corruption. Love this card. I never see it except in my decks. I don't get why people don't play this. I think it's great. I used to run Tendrils of Corruption. Is that what it's called? And Corrupt back in the day. Man, I was a mono black player, like all in for a while. And then I got bored of it because, like, it, especially in Commander, it feels like it plays out the same way all the time. It's like, all right, I'm going to find Cabal Coffers and Urborg, and you're going to get riggedy wrecked, son. And then they did. And I'm like, okay, well, I did that 20 times. What's next? But this card's excellent. I mean, if you're playing a deck with Urborg and Cabal Coffers, you're either likely or should be playing ways to find those pieces, i.e. Urza's Cave, Expedition Map. Grim Servant is the new tutor guy from MH3. And, if you're running other tutors, like when I play decks with tutors, with a lot of tutors, like my Sauron deck, for example, definitely the most frequent card I'm looking for is either one of Urborg or Cabal Coffers. If I don't have either, then I'm getting Urborg first, obviously. And that means this is online. This could, of course, be online anyway if you're playing just a budget mono black deck with a bunch of swamps, or you want to try to jam that Cabal Stronghold, which I don't find is worth it typically, but sometimes I like to run a bunch of basics and monocolored so I can play Extra Planar Lens, which I think is a sick card and also doesn't see enough play. By the way, neat trick with Extra Planar Lens, if you didn't know this already, it looks at the name of the card. So while something like Rampant Growth can find you a basic land, which could either be, a snow-covered mountain or a regular mountain, they're both basics. The snow is, not part of the basic super type. Extra Planar Lens, on the other hand, looks at the actual card name. So if you jam your deck full of snow-covered swamps and you play Extra Planar Lens, you minimize the chance of helping out an opponent who's just running stray regular swamps. So that's why if you see snow-covered lands, I'm guessing that the most likely reason for that is the person is playing Extra Planar Lens. So interesting little tidbit. But Consuming Corruption is just a sweet piece of removal. Like if you play it in a deck where you're likely to have Urborg like mid to late game, this can just be a 2-mana like snipe a creature and gain 10. Which, like, would you play that if that's what the card said? Because that's basically what this card says. Assuming, again, that your deck is optimized to find Urborg. I wouldn't just throw this in any deck unless it was mono black with a bunch of swamps, like basic swamps, or you're like looking to find Urborg ASAP. This isn't going to make the most optimized deck lists. Like, for example, I mentioned my Sauron deck. This won't make it there, but this would make it in ultra optimized Sauron the Necromancer deck, which, man, Sauron the Necromancer, what a sad story. Like, such a sweet name, right? You're like, oh my god, I want to play this card. What does it do? Oh man, why does it have to be so bad? Sad, I know. But at least our boy Sauron the Dark Lord is the shit, right? Like, dude, come on, he makes up for it, right? Sauron the Necromancer, he's like, he's like, it's okay, man. You probably have a good personality. Anywho, Consuming Corruption's cool. I really like it. I play it. I think you should too. When you land one for 5, it feels good. Even if it's only like 4, it feels pretty good. Like, people play Lightning Helix in Boros decks, and how often are you burning people in the face with that? Unless it's killing them, probably not, right? You're just like using it to knock out some sort of 3 or lower toughness pesky creature like Bloom Tender, or God help you if you're playing against a Drannith Magistrate or something like that, you know? And then like burning something for 3, gaining 3, it just feels good. And if that's the lowest case on this card, then I think it's great. Funeral Room / Awakening Hall. Hey, we talked about you before too, in the Reanimation category. And if you recall, in the Reanimation category, I mentioned that, you know, Awakening Hall as a reanimation spell is not good enough to play in your optimized deck. But when you tack Awakening Hall onto an already great effect, which is Funeral Room, aka Bastion of Remembrance, which is already a playable card, then all of a sudden Awakening Hall becomes very good because, like, do you want to pay 8 mana for a Rise of the Dark Realms effect on just you? Like, Rise of the Dark Realms hits everyone's graveyard. This is 1 mana less, sure, but it only is your graveyard, so that's not good enough. But you're not playing this card for Awakening Hall. You're only playing this card if you want Funeral Room, or if you're a Rooms deck or something. In which case, you know, you're wanting Funeral Room, same thing. And Funeral Room is great. It's not quite as good as Bastion of Remembrance because you don't get that 1/1, but it's that 1/1 is not that important, and you're playing this because it's an enchantment aristocrat effect that is hard to remove. It's not like your Blood Artist or Zulaport Cutthroat, which are like 1 toughness and die to anything, right? They die to a soft breeze. Whereas Funeral Room just sits there and it's just like, oh my god, this thing's going to kill us. Like, it's living up to its name, right? This is where I die. This is where I die. So Funeral Room, excellent card. Awakening Hall, this is an all-star room. Like, you're going to see this forever in Commander, and with good cause. This is a great rate on the left side, and then that right side's just a bonus, and uncounterable at that. Like, they can only hit this with a counter and activated ability effect once it's in play. So, you know, that's a lot of assurance on your 8 mana investment to know that, like, unless someone's packing a Stifle or Tail's End or Void Slime, which, how often have you seen one of those mounted against you? When you do, oh man, it's always a story. But, and you know, this would be no different. I don't even know what would happen. I guess like the door would get, I don't know if like it would remain locked and then you could just do it again. I actually don't know. So comment below if you know how that works. Like, if you have Funeral Room in play and then you try to unlock Awakening Hall and someone stifles it, does the room remain locked and there you can just like pay another 8 mana to try to unlock it again? I think that's how it works, but I'm certainly not sure. Anyway, Funeral Room, great effect. This is a card that you want in your Aristocrat decks for sure. And the fact that it's got that Awakening Hall part tacked on is such a nice bonus. You're not going to use it very often. I'd say like the number of times that you have Funeral Room out that you'll end up opening the Awakening Hall door is probably like 25% or less. But that's fine. It's just a bonus. This is just gravy, right? Funeral Room gravy. Yuck. Hey, look, it's Guide of Souls. Fresh off dodging a bullet in the modern Mannings. What's he do? This is a 1 mana 1/2. Wizards? Why? 1/2? Come on. Whatever. 1 mana 1/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and get 1 energy. So this, as I mentioned earlier, is not Soul Warden, Soul's Attendant. It's about, you know, 1/4 as good as those because it's not gaining you life from the other 3 players. But, you know, as a consolation prize, you get an energy for every creature as well, which is very strong. This is an extremely good energy generation rate. And this life gain that they've thrown onto it, just for whatever, like, that's going to be the part that makes a huge difference. Like, if this just sits out in a game of Commander and like until, there's some games where just board wipes never happen. Like, right? The board just gets build up, and then the game ends. If this just sits out all game for like 8, 9, 10 turns, you're going to gain like 30 life off it, maybe. In the kind of deck that wants to run this. Like, the most frequent deck you would want to run this in is something like Satya, which is like an energy commander. This is where I've run it. But what I noticed when I was running it in those decks, in that deck, was like, holy moly, this card is like really good. I would just put this in any deck, because that second ability says whenever you attack, you don't have to attack with this. It's just whenever you attack. So it'll work right away as soon as you play this. And you don't have to send your puny like 1/2 into like risk into combat. So anytime you attack, you can pay 3 energy. Well, how are we going to get energy in a non-energy deck, though? Oh, yeah. Anytime a creature enters, you get 1 energy. Look at that. And then whenever you attack, you can pay 3 energy. If you do, you get to put 2+1 counters and a flying counter on any of your attacking creatures, and it becomes an angel. So this card is just value city. You don't need any synergy except for like creatures to play this card. If you put this in any deck that has white and is playing creatures, I assure you, you will be happy with it. You know how often people can block flyers? You must know. Unless you haven't played Commander before and you just like watching my videos, in which case, thank you. But if you have played Commander, or if you've seen Commander, you'll know that the number of times that people have an ability to block flying is approximately 0% of the time. I don't think anyone's ever been able to block a flying creature in the history of Magic. You can fact check that if you want, but I'm almost 100,000% certain that's true. So once you give a creature flying, it's basically unblockable, right? So for 3 energy, you can put 2+1 counters and an unblockable counter on an attacking creature, and it becomes an angel. So that like automatically makes the price of the card double, as far as I am aware. Angels just cost twice as much as they should. Therefore, if you got a Guided Souls and it makes it an angel, then you can sell it for more something. Okay. Yeah, good one, Matt. Okay. Sorry, I'm losing it at this point, and I still have like 55 more of these videos to make, so are you gonna make it? You must be sick of my voice at this point. Anyway, Guided Souls, take me to the promised land. And now for something completely different. How about Vaultborn Tyrant? 7 mana, 5 and 2 green. Oh my god, what is even going to come next? Have you seen Quilled Greatworm? Have you seen green creatures recently? I'm expecting like this in 2025. Here, I'm gonna put on my Nostradamus hat right now. So someone mark my words and just let me know when this prediction comes true. Okay, so in 2025 they're going to print a creature. It's going to be 1 green mana. It's going to be, I don't know, either legendary or not legendary, depending on which is better. It's going to have every keyword in history and a bunch of like new keywords, like future sight style. It's going to be a 90/90. And then when you play it, you get like 1,000 mana and draw as many cards as you want. So I'm not unfamiliar with hyperbole, but creatures are getting pretty pushed lately, so that's the long and short of it. So Vaultborn Tyrant, what does it do, actually? 7 mana, 6/6 trample. This is a dinosaur. It's not legendary. which is very relevant on this card. I have made copies of it before, and it is nutso. Whenever it or another creature with power 4 or greater enters, you gain 3 and you draw a card. Okay, good start. Sounds kind of like a Garruk's Uprising, plus you gain 3 life anytime a creature you play. I don't know, triple Essence Warden or something. Oh, and you draw a card. So it's like the Great Henge meets Garruk's Uprising or something. And, because why not, right? Like, it's like, we already gave it this ultra powerful ability that anyone would play automatically, but let's just give it another ultra powerful ability. So let's see what this one is. Whenever Vaultborn Tyrant dies, if it's not a token, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. Okay, so we got a 7 mana 6/6. It's got trample. It's a huge draw engine for any power 4 or greater creatures that you play. It's a life gain engine, and it's got innate protection in that if it dies, as long as it wasn't a copy, then you get a token that's a copy of it, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So it's a little easier to remove too. And there's probably some flavor about it. I don't really get why it turns into an artifact. I guess it's like the $6 million T-Rex. And it is almost $6 million. It's like $35. So, yeah, this card's just excellent. Like, if you're in the market for a 7 mana creature and your deck is a deck that can play multiple power 4 or greater creatures, then this is gonna be great for you. I play this in Glarb. I'm almost never unhappy to draw it. It's just a great value creature that's great to copy. Yeah, the copies don't like replace themselves when they die, but who cares? If you make one copy of this, then the copy trigger, the original sees the copy come in, you gain 3, you draw a card. Okay? And then every power 4 or greater creature you play after that, if you have 2 of these out, is gaining you 6 life and drawing you 2 cards. So, yeah, like this is basically the green Archon of Cruelty. It's really that good. It's just so powerful. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit in every single deck, but the decks it does fit in, like it's going to be one of, if not the best card in the deck. Like, of course, this is going in like all of the dinosaur decks, right? You know the ones: Pantlaza, Gishath, even like Galta, Stampede. No, not Stampede Tyrant. I guess that could be a commander. I don't think it would be that good, but like the other Galta, the original Primal Hunger, really good in that deck, of course. Really good in like, a commander I love that I never see any of from Jumpstart 2022 is Runati Behemoth Caller. This guy's a blast to play. If you haven't seen or played this card, try it out. It's so fun. And this is pretty much the best thing I can think of. I might rebuild that deck. It's like too fun to play. So keep an eye out or pester me on Discord and maybe I'll put that Runati deck together again because that's a fun one. Anyway, good creature is good. How's that for insightful feedback and like commentary? This is what you're here for, right? Big dinosaur good. Next. Vein Ripper. Man, I never get tired of seeing, saying, or hearing this name. Like, is there anything more evocative of a fucking like vampire? Just like, I'm gonna fucking rip your veins open and drink your blood, motherfucker. That's what he's doing. Oh, you want to try to kill him? Sack a creature. 6 mana, 6/5 flying, ward, sacrifice a creature. Good stuff. Whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2, and you gain 2. Oh, okay. So not only does it have ward as protection, it has board wipe protection in that there are games, and I know you've you've been in games such as this where someone has a blood artist, and now imagine they had two blood artists, except they're combined, and they're a 6/5 flying with ward, sacrifice a creature. So now all of a sudden, someone's holding a Wrath of God or a Toxic Deluge, and they're like, okay, like I can get rid of the Vein Ripper. I'm just going to cast this Wrath of God. And then someone's like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. If you cast that, how many creatures are in play? 1, 2, 3. There's 23 creatures in play. So we're going to take 46 if that happens. Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh, he has a roaming throne too. Oh, he's got a Teysa Karlov commander. Uh-oh, I think we're dead. So now it's like, all right, who can pay the ward? Because otherwise we're dead. And then also it's like, oh, you have a sack outlet also? Oh, we're in trouble. So now you've got your finger on the button at all times, right? You have 11 creatures in play and you're like, oh, you want to try to kill me? It's like you've got your own little mini Aetherflux reservoir and you're at 59 life and you're like, yeah, fuck with me. I dare you. I dare you. Give me a reason. Yeah, that's Bane Ripper for you. So, this card's down to $8. Yeah, do it. This card is sick. I mean, like, it's 6 mana, so it's like, it should be good, right? But it is good. It's not apparent how good it is until you have experienced it. So, get the feeling. So some really good cards in the life gain category, and life gain, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is such an important part of Magic now. If you're not packing life gain, you'll find that you're just below 20 life all of a sudden, and then you're just at the whim of the player with the Vein Ripper and the Phyrexian Altar, because he can just cast a mass reanimate spell and kill you whenever he wants, or maybe he even just has the board to do it already. So you really need to keep your life total at a safe number. And if that means politicking, if that means just packing more life gain than you're used to, I think that's more important than ever nowadays. So who is the winner of the 2024 Surfie for life gain for such an important category? By the way, I have these categories sorted by what I feel is order of importance relatively. I mean, like, I'd say like the chunks, like 1 through 5, are probably all interchangeable, 6 through 10, all interchangeable, that sort of thing. But like in general, I tried to save the most important categories for the end because I didn't think this video series was going to take 680,000 hours. And I was like, oh, it should be like the Oscars. But I should have realized because the Oscars are like 680,000 hours long, right? I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it was foolish of me not to realize that this would take an equivalent amount of time, since the production value is clearly equal to or better than the Academy Awards. Right? Yeah, 100%. So the Surfie for 2024 life gain goes to Bloodthirsty Conqueror. I mainly chose him because he was extorting me and it's kind of like threatening my family and stuff. So no, for real though, like this card is the real deal. Like the body, the effect, the ability to go infinite with it if you so desire. There's just too many things that are powerful and unique. And I mean, not unique, like obviously they're redundant effects, but like to get this package, like you don't see this sort of thing every day. And this is just a card that will soup up any deck you put it in. Does not matter at all if you have any synergy for it. Just put this in a black deck and watch it go to town. In fact, I would venture to say it might even be better in a non-life gain deck because people will be less afraid of you going infinite with it. And if you tell them you're not going infinite, they are more likely to believe you. You're just like, I'm just playing because good value and I need the life gain, and don't lie about it. Like someone did that in a video I just posted I'll put the link here because it's hilarious. But like this guy played, he had I forget which effect he had. He had like an exquisite blood, which is the same as this creature, and he's like, I'm not running any of the like pieces that combo with it. And he was just like blatantly lying to us because in the following turn he played the piece and he's like, I didn't say I didn't have this one specifically. We were like, the fuck? Thankfully, I had a counter, but like it was just we were like rubbing his face in it for the next hour. And he's like, oh, what was I supposed to do? Tell you guys that I had it? I was like, we were like, no, but you didn't have to say anything. Like, I don't know. I don't know. But Bloodthirsty Conqueror is the shit, regardless of that guy. And yeah, it's this scary card, so you should play it, and you should be scared AF to play against it. On to everyone's favorite, Counterspells. Oh yeah, blue mages. What? I mean, I like me some Counterspells, but I know not everyone's a fan. But like, I don't really get that. Like, Counterspells are blue's removal. Like, other colors have removal for things once they hit the board. Blue has to remove stuff on the stack. It's a lot more conditional, TBH, but like, I get it. Like, you want to be able to cast your spells and like, I don't know, like, why is it okay that I swords your creature, but like, if I counter it, you're going to be annoyed. I just don't quite get that. But deal with it. It's part of the game. Number 1, Aven Interrupter. I love this card. Just want to start off by saying that, like, I'm a massive fan of this card. I love all the white counterspells. I play them in like so many decks. If you've watched my videos, you've seen me land Reprieve like tons of times. And man, if Reprieve is always like out of left field, it wrecks people like consistently. And Aven Interrupter is no exception. It costs an extra white pip, which is a little annoying, but you get a 2/2 flying on top of it. And you get this like stacks effect, which is spells that your opponents are casting from graveyards or exile cost 2 more to cast. This won't always be relevant, but there is a lot of impulse draw effects, which, when I say impulse draw, I mean like these cards that say like you can play them until the end of your next turn, whatever. Those are all cast from exile. There's not tons of stuff cast from graveyard, but like sometimes you'll just run into a commander that this wrecks their day, like Oscar Rubbish Reclaimer is an example. But in general, like, you don't even need to worry about that second part affecting them. I mean, it does affect the spell that you exiled, right? Just like, so let's talk about what it does. I'm getting ahead of myself again. 3 mana for a 2/2 flying with flash. When Aven Interrupter enters the battlefield, exile target spell. So it becomes plotted. And then spells your opponents cast from graveyards or exile cost 2 more to cast. So, number 1, this isn't a counterspell. So, for it to be the first card in my counterspells category is a little yikes, but I still think it belongs here. I'm just kind of joking here. The nice thing about this is it doesn't counter a spell, technically. So, if your opponent has a Lyra, Disciple of the Drowned, or a Shamil, the Inner Sun, or any sort of these kinds of effects that say your spells can't be countered, Aven Interrupter don't care. He says, okay, I won't counter it. Exile that shit. And don't worry though, it becomes plotted. You can cast it on as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost. Oh, except that like, yeah, you don't have to pay its mana cost, but you still have to pay 2 because I said so. So yeah, it's a fun card. It really does work. This is the kind of, you don't want to run this sort of card in a blue deck because blue just does it better, right? This is a card you run in mono white, you run in Boros, you run in Mardu, like you run in anything that isn't blue, like that can pay the 2 pips, that wants a 2/2 flyer. So those are the conditions, but if you meet those conditions, really good card. It catches people out of nowhere all the time. And then if it happens to get you some additional value by blocking people from playing a spell from their graveyard or from exile, you have to keep an eye out for these things because they'll forget about it, right? So this is a hard card to play. It's like a high skill ceiling to make sure you don't miss. This wrecks people playing Cascade, by the way, or something like Atali, either Atali, because like all of a sudden now, all those spells that they're technically supposed to be allowed to cast for free, sorry man, those cost 2 extra. So bad news for you. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this card. I think that if you haven't tried it, you should, because first of all, Aven Interrupter, it's fun to just like wreck people's day with a card that's called Interrupter, because you can just be a dick about it and be like, wait! Layer of Denial. Pre-release copy is the cheapest? I don't think so. Maybe. 3 mana. This is just a cancel. Look at that. Cancel got power crept. 3 mana, counter target spell. No conditions. No non-creature, no only on blah, blah, blah's turn, whatever. This is just straight up counter spell. I love it. Like, there have been too many times where I get stranded with a bunch of like counter and non-creature spell counters in my hand, and it's just like creature after creature after creature. So big points that this can hit anything. Oh, sorry, I want to back up to Aven Interrupter for a minute. One thing I forgot to mention about this is that like it's great against counter spells. So spells that need to be cast at instant speed, like counter spells, for example, are completely wrecked by Aven Interrupter, because if they're plotted, so if I cast a Flare of Denial and my opponent Aven Interrupters it, that Flare of Denial is just gone. It literally cannot be cast. Drop a comment if you can break this, like what I'm trying to say right now. But I think once a counterspell is plotted, there's no situation in which you can cast it. I think that's true. Someone check me on this. But for all intents and purposes, at minimum, that counterspell, that Flare of Denial that you even interrupted, is going to be stuck plotted forever, because you have to cast it at sorcery speed, and you can never cast a sorcery when something's on the stack. So therefore, you can never target anything with Flare of Denial, as far as I know. But please try to break that, and if you can, drop a comment, and I'll give you a gold star. So good job, Aven Interrupter. Another point for you. So back to Flare of Denial. So it's 3 mana counter spell. Not great. But you can sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay this spell's mana cost. So part of the free to cast cycle from MH3. This is one of the best, although I think they're all quite good except the green one. The green one is hot garbage, but all 4 of the other ones I quite like. This is not a card to play in every deck, but if your commander is cheap and not that relevant, or you're just playing a lot of like, it can't be tokens, which is a bummer. Like in a Merfolk deck, this is like a slam dunk, right? You're going to have a bunch of like expendable Merfolk probably. And you don't want to necessarily sack one of them, but it's like a nice option to have, right? You don't want to sack your commander, but if a board wipe's going to go off, if you don't, then like it's like, okay, I can save my whole team by sacking my commander. Like captain's going down with the ship kind of thing. So this is just a flexible counterspell that like works well in some decks. It's not perfect for every deck, but I think it's a really strong option, and I like that they're giving more support to blue decks that aren't like strictly control based. Like this is not going to be great in a deck that's running like 10 or less creatures, probably. Unless, like I said, your commander is not that important or you want it to die for whatever reason. So like just keep this on your radar as an option. Like I find myself often just defaulting to the same counter spells, but I like to broaden my perspective, like in the pool of counters which I'm looking at sometimes. And this is one that I have been keeping a closer eye on, and I'm trying to test out a little bit more because I think it's a pretty good one. Speaking of pretty good and cool counterspells, Invert Polarity. Man, if you haven't seen this card, you're in for a treat. First of all, sick art. Second of all, what does it do? So it's 2 blue and a red for a counterspell, which historically, this casting cost for counterspells have been so bad. Every time I see one, I'm like, yeah, it's an is it counterspell? What does it do? Oh my god, it's so bad. I don't even remember what they are. That's how bad they are. But this one, oh man, makes up for it. So for 2 blue and a red, a little bit of a steep cost, but like, what do you get? It's so cool. Choose target spell, then flip a coin. Uh-oh. We don't like this line of text usually. In fact, actually, it's worked out really badly for me. I've played this spell probably 10 times now in my life, and I've not won a single flip. Not a single one. Can you believe that? But it doesn't matter because if you win the flip, which I haven't, but I've heard tale, if you win the flip, gain control of that spell, and you can choose new targets for it. If you lose the flip, counter that spell. So the worst case scenario, actually, there is a worst case scenario, but I'm going to say this anyway, even though it's going to end up being wrong. The worst case scenario is that you counter the spell, and the best case scenario is that you steal the spell. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual worst case scenario, and that's that they're casting a Wrath of God, and you don't want that Wrath of God to happen, and then you win the flip. Then you control Wrath of God, and you can choose new targets for it, and it doesn't have any targets, and you're like, oh, I actually don't want to cast this, but you can't stop from casting it. So that's the sad thing about this card. There are occasional times where there's going to be a spell that you can't stop if you end up stealing it. And then you're like hoping to lose the flip, which thankfully for me is 100% likely. So this is basically a worse cancel for me. So by that logic, I shouldn't play it, but I'm still going to play it in every is a deck because, like, come on. I just want to steal someone's, like, expropriate or something crazy, Rise of the Dark Realms, like, or Insurrection's not as good because, like, you steal the stuff on their turn. It's not that good, but man, I can't wait for the day where I win the flip with this card. It'll happen. I have faith. Heart of the cards, right? I'm going to invert someone's polarity and they're going to be pissed. Null Elemental Blast. I love this card. I can't believe it's not seeing more play. I think it's pretty easy to run in a lot of decks. I think I should have it in more decks. Every time I've cast it, it's been a blowout. It's so good. You should have this in your monocolor decks, unless you're running like tons and tons of basics with extra player lens or something. So choose one. For this cost a single colorless pip. I think that's what they're called. Not a colorless mana, not a, like, one generic mana, right? It costs a diamond mana, which means you have to pay colorless for it. So, for example, basic lands cannot tap for colorless mana. They can only tap for the mana that they are, like Mountain Red, Swamp Black, etc. But if you had a pain land like a Sulphurous Springs that can tap for a red or a black, you take a damage, or it can tap for a colorless. Only colorless mana can be used to pay these diamond costs. So this is not an auto include in every deck. You have to have enough sources that can make that colorless pip. Of course, everyone probably has Soul Ring, but Arcane Signet doesn't do it, right? The Talismans do it, but the Guild Signets from Ravnica don't do it. So it's not the easiest card to get in your deck, but it is possible. I'd say you probably want minimum 10 ways to make a colorless pip. That's really on the low end, I would say. But the nice thing about this spell is it's always going to be relevant. Like, yeah, it's only 1 mana, but, you know, if you draw it late game, it's still really good, right? Because it can encounter a multicolored spell, or it can destroy any multicolored permanent. So it's like Red Elemental Blast, Pyroblast, Hydroblast, Blue Elemental Blast. These flexible modal spells that can either counter something on the stack or pop something in play. Like, nothing feels better than top decking a Pyroblast the turn after someone played a Rhystic Study and you're like, no, I wanted to counter that. And then you're like, oh, wait, I'll destroy it instead. You know? And I'll pay the 1 because F you. So, Elemental Blast, really good card. I think you should play more of it, period. Like, it's just too good. Too good. Really, really strong card. Speaking of really, really strong cards, Sink into Stupor. Oh my god. All the MDFCs, I did in 3 categories. We're going to have an MDFC section where I'm going to talk about the 6 best MDFCs of the year. And newsflash, this one's on it. Such a powerful card. 3 mana, so you can either return target spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to their hand. So this is just like we were talking about with Null Elemental Blast, in that it can hit something on the board, bouncing it, or it can bounce something right from the stack. So good against spells like that you don't want to resolve. Like if they tap out for a huge Crackle of Power or Torment of Hailfire, it's like, I don't think so. Return that to your hand. You can try to cast it next turn. But in the meantime, everyone just like kills them because they know it's coming, right? And then if you need to deal with a problematic permanent in play, bounce it to your hand. Bounce spells, criminally underrated in Commander. And there's literally no reason not to play this in every blue deck forever and ever. Because the other side is a untapped blue land. It's just a land that can come in untapped. Yeah, you have to pay 3 life, but that's nothing. Just pay the 3 life. Yes, it will matter some games. But you know what else will matter? If you play a tapped land and like miss playing what you should have played on a like very critical turn. So get over your hesitation of paying life for things and just pay all the life. Sink into Stupor. It's magically delicious. This card is amazing. Amazing. Look, it's $10. This is uncommon from one of the most open sets of all time. It is worth this price. Hopefully you have one anyway before it got up to this price, and hopefully it's not actually this much, but man, this card's so good. Lastly, Drake's Serenade. This is a 1 mana instant. This is the complete opposite of Swansong, which, I mean, like, describing it that way makes it sound pretty bad because Swansong is pretty good. And honestly, this I don't think is that good, but I haven't played with it that much. The problem is it can't hit instants or sorceries, so that's a little bit yikes. I do want to play with this a little bit more because I was just complaining about not having any creature counters, so like this is a good creature counter because it can also hit an artifact, and I guess a planeswalker. I don't really know what a planeswalker spell is, but apparently it's a card type in Magic the Gathering. Just kidding. I know what a planeswalker is, but like you don't see many planeswalkers in Commander because they are pretty bad usually. So I mean, I wouldn't expect to hit any planeswalkers, but like the other 2 will come up. 1 mana counters are excellent. So like being able to stop someone's 5 mana commander for 1 is pretty backbreaking, to say the least. Especially when like, they're playing a scary 5 mana commander, let's say, right? Like it's, or, 5 or 6 mana, whatever it is, like something that's like, they're ramping up to it and it's coming, and like, they're playing Miriam Sentinel Worm. And they're planning to protect it. Like they are holding up a Lightning Greaves, right? They're thinking like, okay, I'm going to drop Miriam, I'm going to Lightning Greaves her up. She's got ward, so she's going to be safe, whatever. And then you hit them with a Strict Serenade for 1 when they think like, oh, you're mostly tapped out. You're probably not having an answer to this. that's where the power of this comes. So I think this is a really good card. I have been hesitant to play it yet, but I want to do a little bit more testing with it because I think it is a powerful effect. And yeah, it can't hit everything, but not everything needs to be able to hit everything to be good. So good selection of counters here. Not the best we've ever seen by any means, but that's fine with me. There are plenty of really, really good counters already, and I don't want that many more in the pool unless they're like unique or sort of like special. Like Sick into Stupor is the perfect example because it's an MDFC, right? A modal dual face card. This can be a land most of the time. And if you play it late, if you late game draw a bounce land or a way to just like pop it back into your hand, then all of a sudden it's a spell again. So I love MDFCs. I love bounce lands for that reason. So I think we got some good options here. I like that they're unique. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But there can be only one winner for the 2024 Surfie for Counterspell. The winner is Sink into Stupor. This card is it's just so good. There's nothing more to say except that, like, this is the first card that goes in any blue deck that I build, and I don't see how that will ever change, ever. And when you make a statement like that, how could it not be the winner? It's so good. That's it. Just so good. All right, on to draw. Everyone's favorite, right? Who loves to draw cards? I do. I've split out the draw engines, meaning cards that will like draw you cards repeatedly, repeatable draw effects, some people call them, versus like single instance draw spells, which I have here. So let's look at the top 5 of the year. Number 1 is Demand Answers. 1 in a red. This is an instant. As additional cost to cast the spell, you need to sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. And then you draw 2 cards. So this is an interesting one because it's not that unique. Red has a few different spells that do this sort of thing. Cathartic Reunion, Tormenting Voice, others. The nice thing about this is it's like just like those, except it also gives you the option to sack an artifact versus discarding a card. So normally it's just like additional cost, discard a card, then draw 2. So you're really only like kind of filtering, or you're really only drawing 1, right? Because you're discarding 1 and then you're drawing 2. But if you sack an artifact, if you have something expendable, if you've got, a food, a clue, those are all artifacts. If you've got a servo schematic or you have an Ichor Wellspring, if you're playing a red deck that cares about sacrificing artifacts, like my Imskir Iron Eater deck, for example, this is a great card in that deck. Probably should be running it, actually. I don't know if I am. This is just great red card draw, and red doesn't get a lot of good card draw, and that makes it very valuable. And if you're able to copy this spell, you don't have to pay that additional cost again. So that's the way to do red card draw. If you like fork this, you're just drawing 4 and discarding 1. So good card. It's, a slight improvement on a card that was already good. And that's always going to be a winner in my book. All right, another MDFC for us. We've got Disciple of Freyalise. This is 3 colorless and 3 green, 6 mana total for a 3/3 elf druid. When Disciple of Freyalise enters, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you draw X cards and gain X life, where X is that creature's power. So this is Disciple Bolas, like in black. Put it on a green creature. It costs 2 mana more, but for the flexibility of having this, we've got Garden of Freyalise on the other side, which is a untapped green land. Comes in untapped for 3 life. And yeah, I mean, like, this is a terrible rate for this spell, right? Like, if we're just comparing this as a spell, I would tell you don't ever play this card, right? Play Life's Legacy. Play what's the 4-mana one that lets you do the same thing, but it's instant speed and gains you life. There's Greater Good. There are better ways to do this, even in green. But there are no better cards than this one, because this is an untapped green land when you need it, which is going to be most of the time. But then, like, sometimes late game, you're going to bounce this back to your hand and play it, or you're going to draw it and be like, my God, I needed to top deck anything except the land. So if this had been a forest, I would have lost. But since it was Disciple of Freyalise, I won. That is going to happen all the time. This card is so good. It's a sack outlet, like on a body. It's the perfect, it's these MDFTCs, I'm so happy with them. They perform so well. They're so powerful, so flexible. They improve the consistency of your deck like few other things do. So try them out if you haven't already. This is an excellent card, and if you haven't played it or haven't played a lot of it, you should fix that. All right, Eagle Vision from Assassin's Creed. 5 mana, sorcery, draw 3. Okay, is that it? Because that sounds pretty bad, Matt. Are you sure? Well, it also has one other word and a cost. Free running. Free running means you may cast the spell for its free running cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or commander. Oh, hey, look at those last 2 words. They make all the difference, don't they? So this spell's either 5 mana naturally or 2. Wow, that's quite the discount. We're getting a, like, what is it? 3 divided, it's like 250% discount or something. I don't know. I'm trying to do math and I'm tired. But long story short, like, sure, if you're playing assassins, whatever, I guess you can play these cards, but like, I'm not playing assassins. I'm playing this in decks where I can hit with my commander. We're talking about Mirko, Obsessive Theorist, Miss Bumbleflower. You know, if your commander has blue in the cost and is flying or unblockable, or even has trample, like, this card should be in your deck. 2 mana, draw 3. That's what this says. This card is so good. 2 mana, draw 3. Like, it's practically unconditional. If you're playing it in the right deck, like, the thing about it is, like, it's not like they know and can plan for it or like snipe it, right? They don't know you have this. You just hit them with your commander, and then after combat, you're like, oh yeah, now I have free running. Play this, draw 3 for 2 mana. And they're like, just sitting there like, wait, what? Why is that card so good? It's, it's supposed to be 5 mana. Instead, you're paying 2. That's not fair. Yeah, Eagle Vision. This card is the shit. Insatiable Avarice. This is the first and only spree spell on the list, I think. I do like the spree mechanic. Actually, no, I think there is one other one. So what does this one do? It's 1 black, but not really. I mean, that does matter because it is the converted mana cost, but like usually that won't matter because you're going to have to at least choose one or more of the modes below. So the least this can cost is either black and 2 colorless or triple black. And the most it can cost is 2 triple black. So you're either paying 3 or 5 for this, and then the color intensivity increases depending on which modes you're choosing. So either you're getting to search your library for any card and put it on top, which is like Vampiric Tutor, except without the 2 life part, and also sorcery, or you're getting to have target player draw 3 and lose 3. So you can use this on opponents if you need to burn them out and they're at 3 or less. So interesting little tidbit, and it will come up here and there. But mainly what you're going to want to do with this is either play it on turn 3 to draw 3, lose 3, which is great, or play it for 5, tutor something up, any card you want, it goes on top, then you draw 3. So it's like Demonic Tutor plus draw 2. Really, really powerful and exceptionally good card. The only issue is the color intensivity. You need triple black pips to do what you want to do. Casting it for just the tutors part for 2 and a black, not good. Try to not do that unless like it's really important that you get a certain card on turn 4. Like using this to find the One Ring on turn 3 is a reasonable play because the One Ring will just win you the game right after that. But in general, you're going to want to cast this with both modes, and when you do, it's just so good. The problem is you got to take it pretty much a turn off to do that, but this is just a really, really powerful set of effects on a single card, and I love it. All right, last one is one of these paw cards. So I don't think we've talked about this yet. These are interesting ones. It's a fun little take on a modal spell. So you get basically 5 currency, they call them paws, to spend. And you can spend that 5 however you want. So the costs are listed below, and you can use as many of them as you want. So if you want to purchase 5 of the level 1 things, you can. So you could say, I want to put 5 +1 counters on a creature I control. And those can be spread out, right? You could put 1 on each of your 5 creatures. You could do 3 and 2, whatever you want, any combination. Those all get vigilance and trample. So that's a nice little like mini overrun effect if you need it. And then the 2 cost thing is choose artifact or choose enchantment and destroy all permanents of those types. So you could choose both. That would cost you 4, and then you'd have 1 left over to put a +1 counter on something. Or you could do 3 of level 1 and a level 2. You can't, or you could do 1 level 2, 1 level 3. And I think that's the mode you're going to use most frequently is 1 of the second and 1 of the third. So what is the third? It's why it's in this section. The draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So like a Rishkar's Expertise, like a Garrick's Uprising, green has a lot of these types of effects, but the flexibility and the combination of things that you have on this card just make it so good. Like they're all so different, which is what makes this card great. Like the level 1, the level 2, the level 3, all completely different, right? You've got the +1 counters and the vigilance and the trample from the first one, and sometimes that's going to be what you really need, and that's going to win you the game, just giving something trample, or giving it counters or vigilance or whatever. And then a lot of times you're going to need that second mode. There's just a ton of like scary enchantments or artifacts out, and you're just going to need to wipe them selectively, or wipe both of them, right? And then most of the time you're going to use this as a draw spell, but which is like, this is a good rate. It's not the best rate you can get for this sort of effect, but the fact that you're going to get at minimum like 1 of the second mode or 2 of the first mode tacked on to this draw spell that is already a decent rate makes it like a top tier way to draw cards in green. I would say like you can just straight up replace Rishkar's Expertise with this. If you don't want to think about it, I think it's nice to run both potentially, but if you were just feeling lazy and you're like, I don't know what to cut, like you could just cut Rishkar's Expertise. I think this is straight up better. So really good card. I think a lot of these cards are really good, but there can be only one winner. I don't know if you knew that, but there can be only one winner. And the winner of the Surfie or draw goes to, it's gotta be Eagle Vision. This card is busted. 2 mana, draw 3. Hey, this is the closest I'm going to get to playing Ancestral Recall. This card's so good. It is like criminally easy to get the free running off, assuming your deck is like built for it. Don't just throw this in like 0 power commander. Like I can't even think of a blue 0 mana commander. Jace Vryn's Prodigy commander deck. That sounds so bad. But yeah, if your deck's built for it, this card's, oh god, it feels so good. To cast this 2 mana, draw 3, it's just like, wow. Love it. Love it so much. Such a good card.